The Last of Us, Fallout, Sonic, Pokemon, Mortal Kombat, Minecraft, Zelda, and Clash of Clans for some reason? It's fair to say the video game adaptation curse has officially been broken for a few years now, and it's full steam ahead on adapting as many video game franchises into silver screen entertainment as possible. Gaming is the new book franchise, the next big thing to get adapted into 17 different formats to tap into the established fanbase. If you're around my age, you probably remember waiting in line at some point to pick up the newest Harry Potter book. Or maybe it was Hunger Games. The early 2000s were the time of book-to-film franchises. Not going to lie, I enjoyed Maze Runner. Great book and solid movie.
Day one, Greenie. Rise and shine.
In the 2020s, games have become the new books. It makes sense. Take something that people are already invested in and format it for different audiences. Not to mention gaming already makes more revenue than movies and television combined. As a whole, this seems like a net positive for everyone, right? It's weird to think there was a time when I would have been bullied for playing a Mario Kart game back in grade school. Now, I'm sure you get made fun of if you don't have a certain Fortnite skin. But as gaming grows in popularity and mainstream appeal, I can't help but see how this is changing how games themselves are made in the first place. Conker's Bad Fur Day was a game released in 2001 on the Nintendo 64. You play as an alcoholic squirrel as the game begins, drinking with your friends before they are drafted off to war. In this game, there are rabbits in bikinis, murder, and a bunch of other crazy shit. It's gained a cult following over the years due to it being so out there and over the top. Now, whether the game itself is good or not, I don't know. What I do know is that the developers and writers clearly weren't holding back, and definitely weren't concerned about being censored or told to tone it down. 17 years and a whole lot of other bangers later, that same studio made Sea of Thieves, which isn't a bad game, and has found its footing in the past several years within the live service genre. But it isn't anything comparable to Conker's Bad Fur Day in a story or writing sense. In fact, the vast majority of games today aren't, which brings us back to the franchise treatment. Do you think that when Suzanne Collins, or She Who Will Not Be Named, wrote Hunger Games or Harry Potter, they expected their story to become a billion-dollar franchise? Of course not. Any sane solo author wouldn't have this thought, especially not while in the process of publishing one of their first books. They let the story come first and the success follow. They didn't create while trying to engage the largest possible audience, or keep the story tame as to not offend anyone. Unfortunately, it seems like almost every video game released in the past few years has done the exact opposite, to varying degrees of success. Look at Unknown 9 Awakening, for example. Before this game was even released, there were planned comic books, web series, and shows in production. This wasn't a runaway hit, there was no established fan base. Yet executives saw the success of others and quite literally put the cart before the horse. They seem to forget that in order for all these spin-offs, adaptations, and extra forms of revenue to exist, the game has to be a breakthrough in the first place, and not just a mild one. After looking at all the universe lore surrounding the game itself and seeing the technical state it launched in, you have to ask, why didn't all these people just work on creating the best version of the game they could first, before branching out into all these other forms of media? Because when it came out, nothing really happened. There wasn't even enough hype to generate any substantial coverage, and the few people who did play it weren't having a good time. In another world, one where the full team was working together cohesively on a single project, the result might have been different. It's exactly this that is changing the way modern games are made for the worse. The road mapping, the post-launch patches and promised passes, the corporatization of it all. The systems and resources put into things surrounding the game, eagerly awaiting the chance to adapt it into another form of media. But when you try to appeal to the widest possible audience from the start, you tend to get the worst result. Not rage, not controversy, you're just boring. When is the last time a Ubisoft game actually had a good story? I'll admit, I got the newest Assassin's Creed game, and for the first 15 or so hours, I was genuinely having fun. The opening of the game is pretty cinematically solid, the movement looked and felt cool, and the weather system helped the vibes. Then one day I turned the game back on, stopped, and tried to remember exactly what was happening in the story, and why I was going to various icons on the map to essentially do the exact same thing with no real substantial change. And that's the exact moment I stopped playing. I was bored. Compare that with Expedition 33. There's a reason this game blew up the way it did online. Every time I logged back in, I knew exactly where I was in the story and why I was progressing. When I wasn't playing, I was thinking about the story and characters, with genuine interest to see what happens. I didn't need a map marker or a new piece of loot with bigger numbers to keep pushing forward. That's the difference. Expedition 33 sticks so firmly to its mature and subtext-driven story that you can't help but become invested. It doesn't hold back on its own terms, and it definitely isn't concerned with pulling back any emotional punches that might turn off potential players. That takes us into The Last of Us 2. Wait, don't leave, I promise I'll be quick.
Oh, brother!
Look, say what you will about the second game, and people certainly do, but you can't deny that it got a reaction from players. It got people talking. It got some people really pissed off. But it got people talking. If there's one word you can't use to describe the second game, it's boring. If there's one word you can use to describe the second season of the show, it's boring. The game came out with such a hard-hitting, no-fucks-given story throughout with a dark and mature tone. As we all know by now, the show had none of that. The same main events happened in almost the same ways, yet by the end of it, I felt like I just watched a rom-com.
So, we're having a baby. I'm gonna be a dad.
The tone from the game wasn't there at all, and the characters weren't written the same. It's fair to say that the second game and show feel like two completely different things. And I have a theory. I firmly believe if Naughty Dog or whatever higher up executives saw the success of the first season of the TV show before the second game was released, we would have gotten a completely different game altogether. It would be much more in line with the show. Clearly, the producers and writers of the show felt the game was much too dark and portrayed Ellie in too harsh a light as a villain. They were afraid it would alienate potential viewers with its uncomfortable scenarios. So what did they do? Simple. They took it all out. They watered down the story to its biggest plot points and made everything surrounding them lighthearted, upbeat, and happy. The sense of dread was completely removed. We can't have anyone turning off the show because it makes them uncomfortable. We need the largest audience to ensure its success. This proved to be a surefire way to alienate both people who loved and hated the game. If you enjoyed the story in the game and were excited to see Ellie go on a killing spree, then you probably didn't like the show because they did none of that. If you hated the second game, then you definitely didn't like the show because it was essentially the same story just written in a far worse manner. But this isn't a video on The Last of Us 2, and the game and show have already been released. So why does this matter? Well, I wouldn't expect any new big budget AAA games to do something fresh narrative-wise. And I'm ignoring GTA 6 for now. That's the one exception to this rule. You can get away with a lot more if you have a budget of $1 to $2 billion. But it's like Unknown 9, or the hundreds of other live service games that have already been shut down. Less resources go into the game itself in exchange for surrounding promotion, and any bold swings the story might have taken get written out to help any potential adaptations for TV or movies. So what's left? A more boring game with more forgettable characters and nothing actually being said. I realize video games can just be a video game. Not everything has to tell an emotional or thought-provoking story. Sometimes you just want to hit a double kickflip or quickscope your friends. The problem arises when a developer wants their character or narrative to take a certain direction, but is denied early in the process to make the whole package more palatable, turning what could have been a passion project into a more paint-by-numbers experience, in the hopes of getting picked up for a future adaptation. A movie or TV show won't change the original game. This is true, but with the increase in video game movies and TV shows in the past few years, are developers secretly prepping for a future adaptation in a different medium the whole time, instead of a story that lends itself to the medium of gaming? Or are they trying to plan ahead for future spin-offs and adaptations?